Okay, so welcome everybody to week one of MPD. Hopefully everybody had a good spring break last week, or actually I guess it was the week before. But just want to welcome you, and for you on-campus students, sorry I wasn't there today, but I should be there on Thursday. But hopefully everybody had a chance to meet Kim and and in general, I should tell you that our go-to sessions will pretty much be on Tuesdays this time. So I don't think that will change. So hopefully everybody can attend these on Tuesday nights. And by the way, if you can't, it's no problem because what happens is that after we get done here, I go ahead and I put the archive session on YouTube, so I'll provide the link for that, each week. But and by the way, if you can't make any of these go-to sessions, that's fine. They're not really required. They're recommended that you go to them because we go over how to do the assignments each week. So, but they're not required. And if you ever miss a session, that's okay because in our YouTube page that hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at, we have lots and lots of resources on that page, including archive go-to meeting sessions. So if you can't attend any of these sessions live, that's fine. You can just visit that page and you can check out previous sessions from previous months. So anyways, though, what I want to do tonight, though, is actually kind of go over a little bit of an introduction into class. I don't want to go into too much of the content, but I mean, hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at the book, and you can read through that this week. I know it's only Tuesday, so so you still have time. And tonight, what I want to do is kind of give a little bit of an introduction to the class, and then also go over how to do Project One because that's your main assignment for this week. So basically, though, for this week, whether your interest lies in printed media, music, audio, or visual content, basically we have everything for everybody in this class. And let me kind of also start off by saying that this class is a little bit different than maybe some of your previous classes in the sense that this class is more of like a real world class. And that's not to say that's not any knock on any previous class. It's not to say that, the law class that you guys had last month was not important because it certainly is. But basically, though, for this class, what Kim and I want you guys to basically do is to develop a project, or actually a couple projects. You'll distribute them in different various ways, but we want you to develop a real world idea, something that you can basically leave this class with and be able to actually go out there and sell this to an agent, right? Or even self-publish your work. And also, let me also introduce this class by saying too that what you guys are going to be doing for the first couple of weeks in this class, weeks 1 and 2, projects 1 and 2, is related to how things used to work with the old self-publishing, or I'm sorry, with the old publishing model. And that's a good thing. That's definitely a good thing. But it's cool because in the second part of the class, in weeks 3 and 4, we show you how you can take the work that you're doing in projects 1 and 2 this week and next week, and we show you how you can go about self-publishing that. And Kim will show you, and actually I'll do the go-to session in week 3, but and for those of you on campus students, you guys will see in week 3 when Kim goes over how she basically did project 3. In other words, she did exactly what you guys are doing in this class. And but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just focus on weeks 1 and 2 this time, or for this session. Okay. So what we're going to show you how to do in the first couple weeks for project 1, then I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm going to show you some examples of student projects from previous months later on. But basically, though, what you are going to be doing is for project 1 is you're going to be finding an agent, right? Now, I'm going to give you some sources where you can find agents, but sometimes it's kind of funny because sometimes students will ask Kim and I, well, how do I find an agent? Well, that's part of what Project One is. I mean, we can give you some sources, but I mean, part of doing Project One is to do the research yourself and to find an agent that you can solicit your content to. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing for Project One this week is to find an agent, and I'll show you some sources on that. But finding an agent and then drafting a query letter to that agent, right? And just kind of give you guys a little bit of a background into how our course works. Project One that we'll go over tonight, that's 10% of the grade. Project Two, which you'll be doing next week, that's 20% of the grade. Project Three is what you'll be doing in weeks 3 and 4. That's 20%. Real quickly, before I even go on, let me highlight this fourth bullet point here, though. With Project 4, which is the Google Doc assignment. Hopefully everybody had a chance to log on to our new FSO 3.0 platform, and hopefully everybody had a chance to see the document that's there, which says Google Docs, or it might say collaboration assignment. But basically what you do for this assignment is that you choose one team. You don't have to do all four. I know that a lot of you are very, very talented, very skilled, and very educated, and that you probably could do all four teams, but you only need to pick one of the four teams, right? So you're either going to be on team books, which also, by the way, when I say team books, that also includes like magazines. When I say books too, that also includes fiction and nonfiction. So that's one team, is team books. Okay. The next team is team film, which, by the way, by extension also includes TV. Um, so that's the second team. The third team is team music. So when I say music, that can include uh, physical like CDs, but also if you just want to sell like digital copies. That's the third team, and then the fourth team is team video games. Okay, so you just choose one of those four teams, and the grade for this assignment, for this Google Docs assignment, or what we also call the collaboration assignment, or also Project 4, it's all the same thing. Basically, what you do for this assignment is you log onto your team's page, and throughout the semester, you will be adding entries. And it could be related to the assignments themselves. So, for example, we'll talk about Project 1 tonight, but I mean, you might find a good website out there that has a listing of agents. And if you want to post that to your team's page, that's fine. But also, though, it doesn't have to necessarily relate to the assignments. So, for example, if you're on Team Music and you want to talk about latest developments, if you find like an article, for example, on something that's happening in the music industry or anything like that, you can post a link there. And um, also, I will say that for this project, what you want to do though is not just include like links and URLs, but also provide a description for each link that you find, right? In other words, just say, even if it's like 2 or 3 sentences, just explain why you think that this link or this article that you found or this blog, whatever, is important to you. Um, there's, as you guys are familiar with the online students, you have the 4 weekly discussions, right? Obviously, that doesn't apply to you on campus students. In fact, this part right here, the 4 weekly discussions, you actually have 3 case studies, or they're basically quizzes, right? And you can find that link. The resources are on our page, and I assume that Kim probably told you a little about those. And then also you have a current event presentation. Okay, so that's kind of your substitute for here. Now, also, I'm just looking at this, and I realize that this part right here is incorrect. In fact, let me actually change that right now. You have one blog post, okay, and then you have um, the journal assignments, right? So you guys actually, so let me actually put this down here. Journal assignments. So together they count for 10%, right? But if you guys remember from the class that we had with the your month 1 class, right? The mastery, you had that assignment or you had that class, and then you were asked to, by the end of the class, come up with a sort of a kind of a breakdown, kind of a plan for what you want to do in this program. And anyways, though, that assignment now is resurrected, right? So you have one blog post and you have one journal assignment, right? And then, of course, you guys are familiar. And I'm just looking here at the discussion. So Daphne says, like blog posts. Yeah, so I assume you're talking about what I was just talking about with the Google Docs assignment. Yeah, so if you want to find somebody's blog that you find interesting, that's totally fine. Like, so for example, um, I think Russell Simmons, right, has a good blog site. And if you find something interesting and you want to kind of just provide the link to that, that's totally fine. Or you could also find like articles. You could find basically anything that you think is significant and important to your industry that you want to share with your team members. Yeah. And by the way, I won't do this tonight necessarily, but later on, probably next week or the week after that, I'll show you examples from previous months that Google Doc page that students did in previous months. And basically, though, let me also point out though that this project for this Google Docs assignment, don't feel, even though it's kind of a team document, just keep in mind that everybody's is graded and judged individually. So, in other words, you don't have to worry about, like, if someone on your team is not contributing or anything like that. You don't have to worry about that. It's a totally individual assignment. But what we tell students though is that it is sort of a collaboration activity, meaning that we want you to share important information with your other team members, basically. But just to clarify, though, it's an individual assignment. Okay. And then, of course, you guys are familiar with the GPS assignment. That's just you're used to that, right? Just make sure to not plagiarize. Make sure to not attack each other in the discussion boards, or for you on-campus students, physically in class, don't attack each other, right? But that's just the standard 10% there for the GPS. So that's kind of the course breakdown, how this assignment works. And yeah, exactly, Daphne. Not attack, debate. Debates are good. Healthy discussions are good, but not attacks, right? And so let's kind of go over a little bit to start this class. So one thing you want to do, if you haven't done so already, is you want to make sure to choose your team. Oh, and actually, you know what? This is very, very important. In fact, I should have mentioned this before. One of the things that I really want to emphasize is that with our class, like I said, it's a real world class. And what that means is that you don't actually have to do um, anything that's related to your final business plan for EBMS. So what I mean by that is that you take this month as kind of have fun with it. Be very, very creative if you want. If you've ever like thought about writing a book, and you weren't sure maybe how to go about doing that, that's fine. That's what our class is all about. If you ever had dreams of working on like a music project, and and or a film project or a video game, this is the class for that. Okay. And next week, we'll go over templates about how to do all these things. Now, keep in mind, Kim and I know that this is a 4-week class, right? So we don't expect you, if you're interested in a book project that you've always considered, or if you're interested in a film project, we don't expect you to actually go out and be able and write a screenplay in this 4-week class. We don't expect you, if you're on team books, we don't expect you to write a whole book in the next 4 weeks. If you're on team video games, we don't expect you to be able to develop a game design document in the next 4 weeks. And what am I leaving out here? I think in team music, right? If we don't expect you to go out there and do like a complete CD. That's fine. You don't have to do that for this class, but you do have to know enough about your project to be able to describe it to a potential agent. So we'll talk more about this next week, but and I'll show you templates and I'll show you student examples. But like next week's assignment for project 2, you're going to be asked to do either a book proposal or a film treatment or a game treatment or a press kit for those of you on team music. And don't worry, it's don't be too intimidated. We'll go over all those things next week, okay? But the point though that I wanted to mention though is that this is a class where your the projects that you do for this class does not necessarily have to relate to your final business plan. And I know that's a little bit different than maybe some of your previous classes, right? So what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. So we had a student maybe about 4 or 5 months ago who came into our class, and he did not really have any idea what to do because his business plan, I think, was for like some music studio down in like Miami or something like that. And he came into our class and he's like, well, I don't really know how my business plan, my music studio or my music club, I think it was, I don't really know how that's going to translate into this class. And I told him, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to. What you do for this class does not have to relate at all to your final business plan. So we got to talking, and it turns out that he had a family background, like his father, his uncles, they were all deeply embedded in the music industry. They all had a background in music, and I was like, well, how about you for this class? This is obviously a subject that you're really interested in. Um, have you ever thought about talking about your family history? Have you ever talked or have ever thought about doing a book, maybe a book project? And that's what he did for our class. And so my point though is that a lot of the stuff that you do for this class does not necessarily have to relate to your final business plan. And the other thing that I will mention before going on, and we'll talk about some um, introduction to the book a little here in a second. But the other thing I was going to say is that we've had a lot of students that came into our class and had no idea how to get a book published. They had no intentions of ever getting their book published or their screenplay written or their music project done. And they've actually gone through our class and they actually have done these things for real. And I'll show you some examples later on. So, anyways, though, that's kind of an introduction to the class. I hope you guys um, really get a lot out of this class because that's one of the things that Kim and I take a lot of pride in is when students come into our class and they say like, oh, well, I never thought that I could actually do this for real. And now that they actually have gone through our class and they actually have done it for real, that's one of the things that Kim and I are most proud about. So just kind of an introduction to the text a little bit. As you guys probably know, back in the old day, works where we're talking about literary works, and by the way, when we talk in this class about publishing, we're not just talking about book publishing. We're talking about music publishing. We're talking about video game publishing. We're talking about screenplays, things like that. And but back in the day, the process of printing these things was very time consuming, very laborious, very expensive. But there was a certain invention that came out. Does anybody know what that invention was that kind of changed the dynamic of the publishing industry? It was, yeah, exactly. So yeah, the printing press, and that basically really kind of revolutionized the industry, right? Because back in the old days, let me go back here for a second. Back in the old days, um, when we talked about books or music, or well, not necessarily music, but I mean, when we talked about books, we talked about movies. I mean, obviously, movies didn't exist back in the 1430s, but the whole printing process, the whole industry with books was only for like the super elite. right? You either had to be rich or you had to be part of the church to really have any kind of interest in book publishing or reading for that matter. But the printing press kind of revolutionized the industry because now this was something that was for the middle class, right? And you had lots of famous authors who, well, made money, but also inspired minds, basically, because their works now were able to be consumed by the masses, right? And basically, though, what's really interesting with the publishing process today is that way back in the day, you had people like in the music industry, you had people like Mozart. Well, guess what? They had agents, believe it or not. And today, it's kind of the same thing, where at least, and we'll talk more about this in weeks 3 and 4 about the new self-publishing paradigm that's kind of changed the industry. But basically, though, today, even still today, a talented author has to find an agent. The reason for this is because, well, there's several reasons. I mean, the most obvious reason why you need to find an agent is because of the fact that if publishing houses and publishers in general, if they were to accept, just Joe Public off the street, they're going to be bombarded with all these works, right? So in other words, if you do want to get your book published, or you do want to get your screenplay sold, or you do want to get your CD out there, you pretty much um, have to find an agent, right? But there's also some legal reasons behind this, and I don't know if Cassie told you guys last month, um, but there was a lot of cases back in the 1970s where a lot of publishers were accepting unsolicited works, and it turns out that they were plagiarized from somebody else, and then a lot of publishing companies got sued because of that. And that's another reason why today publishers don't accept anymore um, unsolicited work, right? So part of it is because they'd be bombarded with tons and tons of materials, but then also part of it too is because they don't want to get sued, right? So basically that's what you guys are going to do for project one, is to find an agent. And so Nathaniel says, so is it like sharing if found information based on the query and the selected category? Nathaniel, can you elaborate a little on, I'm not sure if I understand your question. So let me try to answer. So you're saying, okay, so, so for the collaboration assignment, yeah, you can definitely, if you find information based on the query and the treatments, yeah, if you definitely want to include sites that you find information on those things, that's awesome. If you also find, like articles that are relevant to your industry, that's totally fine as well. Okay, so one of the kind of in jokes with those that are familiar with the industry is that sometimes what the expression is that finding an agent is harder sometimes than finding a publisher. What that basically means is that it's really, really hard to find an agent. In fact, I know somebody who's actually going through this, a personal problem with this, because he just has this great book, but he can't find an agent. But the thing is, though, that once you do find an agent, you're pretty much good. But finding an agent is actually harder than finding a publisher. Once an agent kind of selects you and wants to work with you, they're going to do a pretty good job. I mean, there's a reason why they've selected you. And agents kind of serve as kind of intermediaries between the publisher and the author, right? And so that's what your mission is for project one, is to find an agent, right? And I'll show you some sources where you can find that in a second here. But let me kind of skip past. So, okay, actually, um, okay. So here are some sources that we have. Now, here's the thing. These are just some guides that you can find if you go to like any kind of major library or like public library or school library. These are some of the sources, but I mean these are just just a sample, right? In fact, there's a book that just came out this past week, actually, if I or maybe 2 weeks ago, um, in the film industry. It was called like Hollywood screenwriting agents or something like that, and it's a and I haven't seen it, but from the description, it looks like it's a pretty good and comprehensive list. But there's also these books like the Guide to Literary Agents. For those of you in the music industry, there is the Songwriters Market. There's another book, How to Get a Literary Agent, and by the way, if you're an on-campus student, they actually have some of these sources in our Full Sail library. But even if you're an online student, they have these, in your local public library, and they might actually have those on the libraries in the ebook collection too. So Nathaniel says, okay, are we also working to create a working publishable product? Yeah, I mean that's the goal, but actually, Nathaniel, that's a great question. Let me also back up for a second, and and let me also, as kind of an introduction to this class, also say that the stuff that you do for this class can be real or it can be hypothetical, right? What I mean by that is that yeah, we don't expect you to, if you have never written a book or you never written a screenplay, we don't expect you to have a screenplay or a book written in the next 4 weeks. Um, in fact, we don't even necessarily um, require that you ever intend to necessarily get your book published or your screenplay published or your music project sold. The point of this class is basically to show you how you would go about doing it once you do have it complete, right? But to Nathaniel's question, though, that the stuff that you do for this class can be totally hypothetical, right? You don't actually have to do this for real. And in fact, when we talk about project one here coming up, um, the requirement of the assignment is to find an agent and to draft a letter, but it's totally hypothetical. Like, in other words, we don't expect you to actually do this for real. You certainly can if you want, but it's not required that you actually have to go out there and submit a letter to an agent, right? The point of this class is to show you how you would go about doing this once you do have it complete and once you do want to go out and find an agent, right? So so as the slide says, you need to submit a query letter to that agent telling him or her about yourself and your project. And now I can kind of go forward and show you some student examples. Okay, so let me, actually, I'm going to not do this one right now. I'm going to start with this one. Okay, now I assume probably the vast majority, you guys probably don't remember Suzanne. She actually taught the class, the negotiation class that I think you guys had with Christy, if I'm not mistaken. Suzanne used to actually teach this class, and she's a good friend of Kim and I, and she's given us permission to use this as an example. And this is an example of a bad career letter. Well, I don't want to say bad. This is a mediocre query letter, right? So in other words, this is an example of what you guys are going to be doing for project one. But I want to show you some do's and don'ts about this. Okay, so the first thing that you'll notice, you'll see Suzanne. She has her we changed her address and everything, but she's got her website, she's got her phone number, her contact information. Um, One of the things that you'll notice right off the bat when looking at this letter is that technically speaking, if you guys can see my cursor here, this November, technically this is incorrect because technically, let me actually cut and paste this. Technically speaking, the date should go up at the top, right? So that's one um, incorrect thing that she had right off the bat, right? So you need to put the date above the contact information. of the person that you're writing. But then also though, right off the bat, you see where I'm circling right here? To whom it may concern. That's a mistake. Okay. In fact, we've actually had people who are guest speakers, for example, that have worked in the publishing industry, and they say that this is immediately a big turnoff for agents. You always want to have somebody specifically that you're writing the letter to. So you want to avoid to whom it may concern. In fact, we've actually had people that have worked in the publishing industry, and they say that like before they even read the query letter, if they see this, if they see it's to whom it may concern and it's not addressed to somebody specifically, it goes right into the trash, right? They're not even going to look at it. And what they say is that like sometimes you might see, for example, if you go on like different websites and you find agents, sometimes it is true that there's not like a specific agent name listing, and so you kind of have to guess. But people that have worked in the industry say that even that though is not correct, because if that is ever the case where you can't find a specific person, then what they say is to pick up the phone and call them and just say, hey, I'm just trying to write a query letter and I just want to know who I should address it to. Because you have to understand too that a lot of these agencies that you're going to be looking at and researching, a lot of them have, 2 dozen or sometimes more agents, right? So they're not going to, the person who's the secretary or whatever, they're not going to guess as to who you're trying to find. Um, so in other words, you need to find somebody specifically, okay, right off the bat. So that's one mistake that Suzanne makes, okay? And then if you'll notice here, okay, the letter starts off, okay, I'm writing in response to your latest query for book submissions on Craigslist. Enclosed is my book and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of a weak introduction. This might be a good introduction to a cover letter for a job, right? I'm writing in response to your latest job ad or whatever. But a cover letter, though, is a little bit different than a query letter. A query letter should have a strong opening. What we call here in the very first paragraph is we need to have a sizzle line. It's a weird expression, but that's how it's called in the industry. It's called a sizzle line. You need like a very good opening sizzle paragraph that's going to get the agent's attention right off the bat. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. But before going further, though, let me just kind of explain that Suzanne's letter does not have that opening sizzle line. It's kind of a weak opening, right? I am writing in response to blah, 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 right? Not a very interesting opening. The rest of the letter is pretty good, though. She says, okay, upon realizing that I'm full of important questions to ask, and kind of a brief introduction to the book, which is good. This line right here, though, is a little bit amateurish, because she says, oh, readers will laugh hysterically and then sit in quiet contemplation as they ponder such crucial inquiries. That's a little bit, for lack of a better word, a little bit corny, because the agent's going to say, listen, I'll be the judge if people are going to laugh hysterically. I'll be the judge of that. The rest of the letter is pretty good, though. She says, okay, she's a college professor, yoga teacher, music producer, attorney, and she has a link to her website, and so the rest of it is okay. So this is not an example of a bad query letter, but it's an example of one that could have been written a lot better. Okay. So let me show you an example of a better query letter. Um, and I apologize. Okay, wait, actually, there we go. Okay, I was going to try to zoom in for a second. Okay, so this is a better example of a better query letter. Still not perfect though, and we'll go over some of the flaws here. But this is from Jim Brown, and let me just kind of let me actually just talk about the good things with this query letter. So first of all, if you notice that what I was just saying about a sizzle line, Suzanne's letter did not have that, but this letter does, right? And it's actually a pretty enticing and pretty compelling opening. because he says, okay, what if as a fraternity initiation you were buried alive for an hour with just an air tank and a walkie-talkie, and then you learned that the people who put you there just got killed into a car wreck. Now, as a hypothetical agent, I'm looking at this and this has my interest. I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty interesting, right? That's an example of a good sizzle line opener, right? And then also, okay, then the rest of the letter is pretty good too. He says that to give you a little bit of background on himself, he's an award winning journalist, a television anchorman, and blah, blah, blah. He's an avid reader. And then, um, and then this letter is very, very short, very, very sweet, very, very concise. That's a good thing, okay? You don't want your letter um, to be more than one page, okay? So for project one, just keep that in mind, that try to make it short and concise, because that is what's going to attract the agent, because you have to remember that they're going to be looking at your query letter, but they're also going to be probably looking at, three dozen others, right? And in a single day sometimes, right? So you have to make it very short, very concise, very sweet, um, very, very compelling, okay? So that's part of the creativity that you have to do for project one, is to, well, first of all, do the research to find an agent, but then secondly, be able to write a short, compelling, and appealing letter to that agent. Um, and let me just look here at this discussion. So Nathaniel says, are there a few examples of query letter structure in the assignment folder for the query letter? Well, good question, Nathaniel. Suzanne's letter that I just showed you, I don't think is in our references, but I believe that this letter is in our references. And if not, um, then just let me know and I can email you a copy of this as well. But and okay, so Val says open-ended questions that keep you guessing. Yeah, basically, exactly, Val. So that's exactly right. Yeah, open-ended questions that keep you guessing, and but let me actually show you some of the flaws with this letter, though, because it's a good letter, but there's some problems with it. Okay, so first of all, you'll notice right at the top. Now this author does have the date in the right place, but does anybody notice anything in these first three things, these first three lines? Does anybody notice something that's suspiciously missing? A couple things, actually. There's no phone number and there's no email address. So you think about it, and just imagine if you were an agent and you got this letter. You think, well, this sounds like a pretty good letter. I'm interested in it. But what? I have to send this guy an email or a snail mail, basically. So that's a big mistake. Is you always definitely want to have your email address, phone number. By the way, when you guys turn this in, you don't have to, for just to stay private, you don't actually have to put your literal address. If you want to be hypothetical and make up a fake address or a fake phone number, trust me, Kim and I won't be tracking you down or calling you. But I mean, you don't have to put your actual real address or contact information on there. But you definitely want to at least put the contact information so that the agent would be able to get a hold of you, right? Then this is just a minor person or minor mistake. But you see here where I'm circling here. Technically, with business documents, you want to go ahead and actually put a colon, not a comma. So I don't know if you guys can see my cursor there, but you want to put a colon after the person's name, not a comma, right? Also, I should point out too that if the person is a woman, and even if you know, let's just say that it's not Mark Tomlin, but let's just say that it's Mary Tomlin. Even if you know that that person, Mary Tomlin, is married, you would always put Ms. MS period. You would not put MRS or Miss or thing like that. But with business documents, you always put MS for a woman's name. Okay, and then also, technically speaking here, if you guys can see my cursor here, the title is called The Hill. Technically speaking, for titles, you want to put those in italics, right? You could actually underline the title as well, but technically speaking, you wouldn't want to put that in italics, right? And then looking at here at the discussion, so Alvin asks, isn't it will be better if you put bold in his name rather than the address? Yeah, technically speaking, you don't really need to put anything in bold, so it could be like this. So you would have your name at the top, centered. Um, and by the way, technically speaking, if you guys want to put this, I know that it's centered right here, but if you wanted to like indent this to the left, that's also considered okay. No problem there. And but you would definitely have some type of contact information at the bottom, or in the next line. So you would have like phone number, let's just say 407 123 4 3 4 5, whatever. And then you would have like Jim Brown at gmail.com or something like that. So you would definitely want to include your contact information at the top. Okay, and then technically, just to nitpick this a tad, and it's really not a big deal at all, but technically speaking, when this writer says, to give you a little background on myself, I'm an award winning journalist, a television anchorman, written a weekly column, I would want to know just a little bit more about this. Like, because he says he's an award winning journalist. Well, for what publication, right? He says he's a television anchorman. Well, for what station? He's written a weekly column for years. I would want to know, okay, what newspaper or what magazine. Um, he's received national recognition. I would want to know, okay, from where, from what organization. I've written 2 screenplays registered with the Writers Guild East. Okay, so maybe just a little bit more information about that, but not really a big deal. But anyways, though, to compare this document with well, I actually closed out Suzanne's letter, I think. Oh no, actually I don't. So if you just take a real quick glance at Suzanne's, this is a little bit lengthier. It doesn't have that opening sizzle line. And by comparison, this is example of a better query letter that's a little bit more concise and more short and to the point, and it does have that opening sizzle, right? So that's what your assignment is for project one this week. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I'm leaving out. We do have to do the attendance questions for the on-campus students. But before we do that though, does anybody have any questions? And Trinity, here's an article that I love which explains how to write each section of a query letter. Yeah, I haven't looked at this, but this looks like a good source. So definitely, Trinity, if you wanted to put this on your team's Google Doc page, that would be great. So yeah, this looks like a pretty good explanation for everything. Yeah, it looks like a pretty good source. So so thanks, Trinity, for sharing that. Okay, so like I said, if anybody does have any questions, definitely feel free to contact Kim and I. We should be around all month long. I think both of our content. Actually, it's weird that you guys are probably dealing with this new tr- uh, transfer to the FSO 3.0. Um, so it looks different from our end too. So but I think our contact information is on there. So definitely don't be a stranger. If you have any questions about the assignments this month, just feel free to let us know. Also for the online students, I know that I didn't really go over this, but the online discussion this week is to you know talk about the significance of finding an agent, and why you think that's important for your industry. The one thing that I should have mentioned this before, though, about our class is kind of an introduction, is that a lot of you I know come from like a music background, and when we talk about agents, sometimes um, you might be thinking about like A&R. You might be thinking about some of the stuff that you talked a couple months ago in your, I guess, what's the project and artist management class. Keep in mind that for this class, we're not really necessarily talking about talent or booking agents. So just keep that in mind. Now, sometimes those things can overlap a little bit between the publishing world and the talent and agent, or talent and booking agents. But for the most part, though, when we talk about agents for this class, like what you guys need to do for Project One, we're not really talking about talent or booking agents because that relates a little bit more to that project and artist management class. What we're looking for here is not agents to represent the talent, in other words, you, the artist, necessarily, but instead, we're looking for agents that are interested in shopping the material, the content itself, right? So just keep that in mind. And yeah. So, anyways, though, so I think that we're pretty much. If there's no other questions, I guess we can probably wrap things up here for tonight before we get to the attendance questions. But definitely, don't be a stranger. If you guys have any questions about the projects for this month, uh, definitely, feel free to contact Kim or I. And I think that I know that that we've talked a lot about some of the projects this month, but already. But you know, you definitely want to not be intimidated because I know that we're talking about writing books and writing movies and writing video games and developing a CD and doing a press kit. But we'll talk more about that next week. But you should not feel like intimidated because I think that you guys will really enjoy this class, and I'll show you like examples from other students as we get closer to projects 2 and 3, and we'll talk all about Kim's book. And just to kind of give you guys a preview, if you guys want to go onto our YouTube page, you can look at the week 3 GoToMeeting session. Not to get ahead of ourselves yet, but I think you guys will really, really love when we talk about how Kim did Project 3. And she wrote a book, and she actually has a couple of books, legal books, that were published um, by McGraw Hills, which some of you guys have probably heard of. But then for her latest books, though, she actually decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to self-publish my book. And it was about a woman named Countess Elizabeth Bathory. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of her, but uh, Countess Elizabeth Bathory. There's been lots and lots of films, lots and lots of books written about her. There's a book called The Countess that was directed by Julie Delpy. I don't know if you guys know who she is, but the evil stepmom, or evil queen, I should say, from Snow White is based on Countess Bathory. And there's lots of books. Actually, she was also featured in Hostel Part 2. And so, anyways, though, we'll talk more about that book later on this month. So Trinity asks, okay, what are the PowerPoint slides for? Are they for a better understanding of why we're doing this assignment, or complete the assignment? So, well, Trinity, I guess they're not 100% related to what you're doing for Project One, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys kind of an introduction to the class a little bit. So, but basically, though, what you guys have to do for Project One is to find an agent and then draft a good query letter. Okay, so Nathaniel, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, so Nathaniel, that's fine. Yeah, if you have to contact me later if you're asking about the collaboration assignment. Basically, though, just kind of view that as kind of like an open discussion forum where you can share links and resources with your or videos as well with your team members. Um, so Everett says it wouldn't download in total. I will check support. Yeah. Okay. So Daphne, I'll double check that. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, okay. So Everett, I think you're talking about the book. Yeah, I don't know why that wouldn't work necessarily. But one of the things you can do, and this is actually a good tip, not just for our class, but I mean, one thing that you can do if you're ever having trouble with any kind of download with the FSO platform, you might want to try just looking at it from a different browser. In other words, if you're using Chrome, try Safari or Firefox or something like that, because I know that sometimes there's occasional glitches with our system. Oh, okay. So yes, okay, Trinity. Let me answer your question. Because that's actually a good question. I'm not sure if our download is there, but basically, the reading schedule for our class is if you take a look at the book, there's 27 chapters. So what we typically tell students to do is read the first 10 in week one. I know that sounds like a lot, but chapters 6 through 10 are really, really fast. But read the first 10 in week one. Read about the chapters 11 through 14, basically in week two. And then read chapters 15 through 27 in weeks 3 and 4. That's kind of how we usually explain it to students. Yeah, so Trinity, there should be an announcement about the reading schedule, but maybe it didn't get posted. But yeah, so for this week, before Sunday, just read chapters 1 through 10. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for attending. Again, we'll have these sessions pretty much, I think, Tuesdays at this time, 6 to 8. And as always, if you can't attend them live, then we always put up the links to the archive session afterwards. And um, we'll get into the attendance assignment. But just to clarify this, because it seems like every single month there's always a little bit of confusion. I don't know how it's like with your other classes, but these attendance assignments are only required for the on-campus students. Okay, so you online students, you can ignore this. I mean, I'm encouraging you to pay attention, obviously, but you don't actually have to submit an assignment. The on-campus students do. Basically, what happened was about a long time ago, they replaced. We used to actually have 14 classes. In fact, actually, in the old days, we used to have 18 classes, right? But we used to have 14 classes, and what Full Sail did basically is they got rid of two classes for the on-campus students, and then they replaced them with these go-to sessions. So these assignments are required for the on-campus students, but you online students don't have to submit anything, right? You don't have to turn in the quiz the on-campus students have, right? So just to clarify, but let's for you on-campus students, let's go over the attendance questions, right? So first of all, and I'll just tell you, well, actually, it's right there. I'll just give you guys hypothetical answers that you can say, right? So number one is, what piece of real or hypothetical content have you chosen for the project, right? This is project one. So in other words, if you are on team books, then you're going to be doing a um, book proposal. Actually, I'm looking at this. You guys don't actually have to worry about project two until next week. But in other words, all you guys are doing for project one this week is finding an agent and doing the career letter. Okay, but to answer the question, um, what content have you chosen for the project? So in other words, are you going to be doing a book? Are you going to be doing a video game? Are you going to be doing a music project? Are you going to be doing a film? Um, so that's all you have to do for number one, is just to explain what you're doing, right? And looking here at the attendant, or I'm sorry, the chat board, Daphne asks, okay, how do we online students then complete the go-to session? Well, Daphne, good question. You technically don't, right? These go-to sessions are required for the on-campus students, but technically speaking, you as an online student do not actually have to complete the activity. Um, and now you actually got me thinking. I wonder if Kim, when she copied forward our sections, she might you might actually see that if you're an online student. It might actually say that there's an activity. I'll try to double check that, but don't worry, you guys don't have to submit anything. This is just for the on-campus students. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Trinity. Yeah, the it doesn't have any weight. It's just like I said, it's just an attendance requirement for this for the on-campus students. So they have to submit it for their attendance, but it doesn't count for anything in terms of like a grade or anything like that. Okay, so number two is what Google Team doc have you joined? So this is very simple. This is Team Books, Team um, Film, Team Music, or Team Games, right? So there's a hypothetical answer. I joined Team Books, right? Or it doesn't have to be that, but um, number three. Okay, so Max says I'm going to be doing a book for my chosen content project. Yeah, exactly, right? So number three is why is it inappropriate to choose a talent or booking agent for this project? And basically, the answer for that is that actually, I give you the answers here. If you just want to copy and paste these, basically. um, um, so you need an agent to shop the creative content, not just the talents. That's why the answer to number three is it's inappropriate to choose a talent or booking agent because that type of agent relates more to your previous project and artist management class, and those agents are pretty much um, responsible for shopping you, the artist. In this class, we're not really responsible for having the agents represent you personally as an artist, but actually the content itself. In other words, the screenplay, the book, the music project, the game, right? Okay, number four, discuss ways that were mentioned in which you can find an agent. Well, I mean, basically, you can find agent, if I go back to these references here, you can find a list of agents in these sources right here. These are just some examples, but I mean, you could find agents just doing like an internet search, right? You can find agents on the Writers Guild of America's website, for example. There's lots of different resources out there that you can find agents, right? Um, Number five, what kind of letter formatting style is required for the project? I should have mentioned this before, but you want to do what's called block formatting, right? So that just looks like, if I can find, okay, so Suzanne's letter, this is what we call block formatting, right? I assume that probably, pretty much you guys probably know what block formatting is, but basically what this means is that you have everything single spaced with two spaces between paragraphs, and everything is flush left, right? You don't have like indents, right? So that's what's it's called block formatting, right? Number six, what are acceptable ways in which you can sort or cite the agent for this project? Basically, if you guys look at the requirements for the assignment, you will notice that you do have to list like the source for where you found the agent. But here's the cool thing with this class. is that we don't have, this is a, again, this is a real world class. So we don't require like APA formatting or anything like that. If you like literally just want to copy and paste the URL for where you find the agent at the end of your letter, that's totally fine. Okay. So those are the acceptable ways. Any style, which includes APA, MLA, or simply providing the URL. Okay. Okay. Number 7 is what is a sizzle opener and where is it found in your letter? Basically, the sizzle opener, well, obviously it's at the very beginning of the letter, right? So that's where it's located. But then the sizzle opener is something that really grabs the agent's attention. So that's the answer is number 7 is what's a sizzle? That's an attention grabber, right? And it's found right at the beginning of the letter. Number 8, what kind of information should you provide in a query letter? Well, I mean, obviously you want to include information about the project itself, but also information about yourself as the creator, the artist. You know, you want to include your educational information, and then obviously you want to make sure that you clarify to the agent how they can get a hold of you, right? Number 9, what resources do we provide to help you complete this assignment? Well, basically, there's information in the references that relate to, in fact, there's a document like uh, tips where you can find agents. You can talk about how, exercises to do before you contact an agent and stuff like that. So that's all located in the references for our class, right? In fact, let me see here if I, well, you know what, so here's the references that we have for you in our resources, right? There's agent query tips, there's before you contact an agent, there's a literary agent guide, there's a sample query letter that I showed you earlier. So those are all there for you. And then finally, number 10, how long should a query letter be? The answer is about 1 page or less. So 1 page or less is how long a letter should be. Okay, and I think that pretty much covers it. So I want to thank you guys all for attending. And it looks like we had a pretty good turnout. So I want to thank you guys all for attending. And like I said, don't be a stranger. If you guys have any questions about any of our assignments, then just feel free to contact Kim or I, and we'll be around, all month long. Our contact information should be there, and we're usually pretty good. So if you have a question about anything and you send us an email, then we'll usually respond like within 24 hours at the latest. So, so I want to thank everybody for attending, and I'll see you on campus, students, on Thursday. And let us know if you have any questions about Project One. But if that's it, then I think I'll go ahead here. I'll close this off. I'll put the archive session on our YouTube page later tonight, and I will see everybody again next Tuesday. And I'll put the information for the go-to session for next week. But and Christopher, okay, so number 6. Okay, so the answer to number 6, Christopher, is just basically you can cite using MLA, you can APA, you could just like literally copy and paste the link. So it doesn't have to be any kind of like formal style, if that makes sense. Okay, great, great. Okay, well, thank you guys all for attending. Hope everybody has a good rest of the evening, and I'll see everybody again here in the Go To session next week, and I'll see you on campus students on Thursday.